Thanks for coming. I'm Darcy. We're going to talk about facilitating workshops with being gentle on yourself. So it's kind of named Facilitating Killer Workshops Without and Not Hurting Yourself in the Process. If you're in the wrong room, I won't be offended if you leave. If you get halfway through and decide not to be here, that's fine too. I will warn you a little bit. The room is a bit more crowded than I had thought it was going to be. So some of our activities we're going to have to change a little bit. Don't worry, it's not scary interactive because we don't have to do any weird introductions or icebreakers. But just bear with me, we're going to have to play a little bit of this by ear as we go through. So what I want to start with is talking about who's in the room. So how many people in the room self-identify as developers? Okay, a few. UX designers? That's what I am. Project managers, product owners, product-y people. Okay. What have I missed? Business analysts? Oh, got a few of those. People who facilitate workshops a lot. People who want to facilitate workshops more. All right, what have I missed? Anything else? Sorry? Okay, so that's helpful. So I kind of know, what skills we have in the room. And one of the things that I'll do is, this isn't about me talking at you guys. I'm going to share some experiences I've had, but it's also the best opportunity that we have is to learn from people around us. So this will be quite conversational. As I'm going through, if you have questions, ask them in the moment. Don't save them until the end. We're just going to go straight through to the end of the time, but it's very interactive and kind of we'll ask a lot of, if you have questions, ask as we go through. Sorry, I didn't realize that was so tall up on the screen. So as I said, I'm Darcy. A little bit about me. I facilitated workshops in one form or another for about 15 years. I counted at one point, and I stopped counting when I hit 4 digits in the number of workshops I've facilitated. That doesn't mean I'm good at it. What it means is I've made a lot of mistakes, and I can hopefully prevent you guys from making some of the same mistakes I've made. Every time I run this workshop on workshops, it's all a bit meta. I learn more from the people I talk to than anything else. So actually, I kind of do this a little bit selfishly for how I can be better at what I do. I am from California. I talk really fast. If I'm talking too fast, tell me to slow down. I'm trying to learn to do that, but it's really hard. So tell me if I am speaking too fast. I won't be offended by it. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, and then we'll get into the actual content. What is a workshop? A workshop is not a meeting. They have different outcomes, they have different purposes, and the way that you interact with a meeting and a workshop are different. So because I'm a little bit of a word geek, I actually just stole the definition. It's the second definition that's interesting to us. A meeting at which a group of people engage in intensive discussion and activity on a particular subject or project. Workshops aren't meant to be easy. They're not meant to be casual conversation. They're intense. They're hard work, but it's people working together towards a goal. I just think that's kind of interesting that it's not just a conversation. It's people working, engaging in intensive discussion and activity. So kind of think about that when we talk about workshops. Facilitator. It's one of my favorite topics. The purpose of a facilitator, because good workshops have a facilitator. And like I said, I've spent a lot of my career facilitating workshops. And so I actually one time thought, what does it really mean? A facilitator, they're kind of the person who runs the workshop and makes it happen. But I thought there must be something more to it than just make it happen. And so I really like this definition. It makes an action or a process easy or easier. So as a facilitator, I shouldn't be invested in the topic that's going on. My job is to make things easier, to make it better for the people who are involved. So if you go into a workshop as the facilitator and you have a strong opinion on the topic, you need to be really careful, because facilitators aren't about influencing the outcome. They're not about getting their agenda or their point on the record. It's about making the process easier. So the facilitator needs to be neutral and removed from kind of emotional attachment to the topics. So I just think that's interesting. And I also think it's quite interesting that the antonym of it is impede. We're not there to make things difficult. We're there actually to like smooth over the conversations. Right. Role of a facilitator, be neutral or fake it. If you have an opinion, keep it to yourself. And if you can't do that, consider getting someone else to do the facilitation for you, because it really can change, it will change the tone of what's going on. So Jeff Patton, who I will reference quite a lot because I actually learned to facilitate most of my workshops from Jeff Patton. He writes great books and leads workshops. If you ever get a chance to work with him, you should. He talks about facilitator as a director, and he talks about it in the context of movie directors. Directors help the actors tell a story. So they guide the story. They're not telling the story themselves. Occasionally they do, but we won't get into that. It's the director of a movie. You're helping other people tell the story. You're guiding them so that the story becomes clear to the people who are watching it and the outcome. And I think that's an interesting approach to it. So we've talked about being neutral. Facilitators are there to guide the conversation and to record the conversation. So to me, that's kind of, when I think about facilitating workshops, it's a reminder of, these are kind of the 4 important things that we need to do. So when I was a kid, I read a lot of books. And in the States, I don't know if they were popular over here, there were these things called choose your own adventure books, where you get to a page and it would, at the bottom of the page, it would say, if you want to walk down the dark, scary alley, turn to page 72. And if you want to turn left and have a cup of tea, turn to page 5, or whatever it was. And there was a lot of flipping through the books, but you got to choose what you wanted to do. That's kind of what we're going to do now. And there are lots of topics that we can talk about within facilitation and within workshops, but what really matters is what we want to talk about as a group. So this is where the activities are a little bit playing it by ear, because when there were fewer people in the room, the idea had been to go like nicely dot vote on the papers on the wall that have the topics presented there. That's not going to work right now. Simply too many people in the room, which is hugely exciting, but also kind of throws off the plan a little bit. So what we're going to do instead is the people who have sat at the tables are going to represent us as a group. So apologies to the people in the back. What we're going to do now is actually have the people who are sat at the tables or laying under the table is close enough. You're kind of stuck there too. If I could get you guys to look down this list of the topics and think about what are the 3 that you most want to talk about in the next however long we have. So people at the tables, I'm going to be pretty relaxed about who counts as being at a table or not, so, whatever. While you guys are thinking about that, I'll give you a tiny, because usually I use this as an activity to demonstrate how KJ voting works, which most people will have heard referred to as dot voting. Everyone puts dots on a topic, and then you go through the topics that are the most popular. There are a couple of things around, actually I won't change that because I'll let you guys continue to think about the topics we're going to discuss. Dot voting, there are different approaches, different uses for it. Some people will do limited number of votes, where you can vote on one topic only, one vote per topic, and you have a limited number, or you have an unlimited number of votes. That gives you long tail information, so you get a long list of exact rank order of all of the topics that are being discussed. If you limit the number of votes, so say you have 3 votes, but you can put those 3 votes on one topic or spread them across 3 or sell them to your neighbor, whatever you want to do, that gives you a smaller set of items, so you lose some of the long tail data. But if you're doing a retrospective and you're really looking at what are the top 3 actions that we're going to do something about, limiting the number of votes can be useful. So if you are doing dot voting or KJ voting, think about whether or not you want to maintain the information that comes in the long tail, or whether or not you just want a few immediate actions. That usually makes a little bit more sense when we've actually done dot voting on the wall. One other tip, if you are doing dot voting on the wall, which is usually quite fun, as a facilitator, rather than spending your time counting the votes at the end, when you get sort of near the end of the voting, there are only a few people up there, you can kind of throw out, hey, by the way, person who puts the last vote on the table, on the wall, has to count the votes. So then they get to count, while as a facilitator, you can help move the discussion into the next activity. I swear that makes more sense when we actually dot vote. Right, so people at the table, again, unfortunately we can't dot vote, so what we're going to do is we're just going to raise our hands, and I'm sorry to the rest of the people in the room, it's just too many people to count if we do them all. So I'm going to go down the list. People at the tables, you get three choices. So how many people want to talk to, and I've got notes for this one, how many people want to talk about personal preparation or prepare yourself? That's easy to count. 5. Got it. Choice of activities. 12. Okay. Again, apologies for the way that we're doing this. Room and material preparation. No one. All right. Just in case you're wondering, the way that I've done this now, don't do that. It helps to make sure the room is appropriate for the size of the audience and the activities you're doing, which I thought I had it down, and then more people turned up. Participation, quiet ones, loud ones, general participation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Ooh. Body language. That was like 7.5, I think. Don't know how to count that one. Workshop rules. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Recording the conversation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Setting the mood. Sounds really inappropriate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Taking breaks. Where did we get to? 1. Aw. We're not actually going to talk about that one because we'll do it. And then post-it note party tricks. Who doesn't want to learn those? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Not actually the winner, but only by 1. Right. So the downside of Choose Your Own Adventure books is there was a lot of flipping between pages. There's going to be a little bit of that now. So the first one that people wanted to talk about was participation. So I'm going to talk about a couple of tricks that I've learned for including participation, and then I'm actually going to throw it out to the room for any questions that you have about participation, and we'll see what other answers we come up with, either my experiences or the experiences in the room. So participation, it can be really hard to get people to join in conversations because sometimes you get people who are quiet, and sometimes you get people who are really loud and talk a lot, and sometimes you get what can be referred to as the hippo, which is the highest paid person's opinion. And if your boss's boss is in the room and they say something, often people don't want to contradict that. So they can rule the room, not even by being loud, but simply by being the highest paid person in the room. And I love the name hippo. It just makes me laugh every time I say it. So some of the things that I've learned around how to do this is, as the facilitator, use your voice to represent the people. You can have this is where Post-it notes are amazing. Have people write stuff down on Post-it notes and hand it to the facilitator so that there's an anonymization of the information. So you don't know, did it come from the highest paid person in the room? Did it come from, the newbie who is bringing fresh ideas to the topic? So what you can do is, most people will have gone through the exercise of you have 5 minutes, write ideas down, 1 idea per Post-it note, gather them back up, put them on the wall. If there are problems with the discrepancy between quiet and loud or highest paid and strong opinions, use your voice as the facilitator to represent the people in the room. So get them to write the ideas down, mix them up, and then you can read them out loud and do the voting process. And in that situation, because people don't know where those ideas came from, they can actually focus on the content of the idea rather than the person who contributed it. So that can be quite helpful. Other things, I told you I talk about Jeff a lot. He knows it. So Jeff Patton taught me a trick a long time ago, which is around getting the people in the room to control the conversation themselves. So rather than you as a facilitator saying, actually, you've said a lot, can you stop talking? Or, I haven't heard from you, can you speak up a little bit? What are your thoughts on this? Which can be a bit awkward for people. You can use this idea of Jeff Patton's cups, which help the team to self-moderate the conversation. So you can have, generally there are 3 different ideas that you use, Basically, you take a plain white cup or whatever, and you write words on it. One of the words is sold, and what happens is if someone is talking about a conversation and everyone in the room agrees with it, but the person just keeps talking, if you have a couple of these, we've all been there, right? You have a couple of these cups on the table, and if a few people hold up the sold cup, that's an indication to that person who's talking, we get it, we agree, can we move on now? So often what the three cups are, there's one that says sold, meaning we get it, we all agree, just move on now. One that says tangent, meaning this is actually interesting but not related to the current conversation, let's write it down and put it on a parking lot. And if you don't have white cups, because we don't always do, you can use index cards folded in half in a cute little tent. And the third idea is too much detail, which is sometimes, right, we get it, interesting topic, let's save the detail for some time later. I've always wanted to use these in stand-ups, but I've never done it, because in stand-ups, people are like, oh, but I need to change this line of code. And you're like, right, just take it out. But if you lay these around the table and you explain to people how to use them, then rather than you as a facilitator having to be solely responsible for moving the conversation on, you empower the teams to do it themselves. The first time people do it, it can be a little bit awkward, but often in groups that get along well with each other, it starts to become a bit of a joke. But they're really useful because then people can contribute themselves when they want to move on the conversation. Right, so those are a couple of tips that I have about how to get people to participate. What questions do we have? And this is from anyone in the room, not just the tables. We're moving on from that now.
How do you encourage people to use things like the patterns cups when you have a situation where you've got a hippo?
Sorry, when you have a situation, what?
Where the hippo is perhaps the person who's giving you too much detail or talking. If you've got the junior, you're probably still going to be reluctant to hold up the sold.
You can start to do it yourself, because it's the first time that you do it, assuming that it is a kind of safe place. And there is an assumption that there's a fair amount of safety in the room, which isn't, I know that's not always true. That's kind of a separate topic, how you get that. If you hold it up and go, hey, are we to this place? How do other people feel about this? As soon as they see that example, other people will often kind of pick it up. And that's why the first time anyone does it, it can be a bit awkward. But show them by example.
You can also ask for permission at the beginning of the workshop and say, we've got a lot to get through, so we're going to use the system. So feel free, we need to stay on topic. So.
Yep, that. Other questions? Comments?
The is great, but the problem I've sometimes found is that you don't get enough detail to be able to explain it, and then you need to go back to the person and say, what is this? And then when they put it in, then you kind of lose that trust of anonymisation, or you just don't talk about it. So I don't need an answer for it unless someone's got an amazing magic trick. How do you get that? Maybe let them write it again in more detail. I don't know. But
I think for me, on that note, it goes to the point where that safety bit and having the teams know that it's okay to open up and no one is going to be open to it. As a team, we have to be open with each other. So if there's a point that it's not clear, please, I say, please feel free. I will ask who wrote this and expand, but be safe and know that it's safe to say that in the room. Having this in the room.
the terms be clear enough, I suppose. If you start, right?
And the other thing I find is that by the time you've got a lot of ideas on board, and even if people explain some of their ideas, when people come to vote or select, they're overwhelmed by the number, and so you can't really pick out, oh, this one was from whoever, this one, they just get lost in numbers. So people tend to just blend them anyway by that point.
Anyone?
Jeff Patton's cuts are great for the stopping loud ones from going on and on. Are there any good kind of exercises or things that you could do to get quiet ones to speak up before? Any kind of,
Do you want, in terms of getting them to speak up themselves or getting their ideas represented?
I mean represented more.
Okay. Often what I've done is the post-it note stuff and kind of encouraging people, but also you can do it in just preparation before the workshop. Talk to people, find out what's really going on. I would never go into a workshop completely cold, not knowing the background, not knowing the personalities of the people in the room. Like, you gather that information and can encourage people to speak up. It depends on why they're not speaking up. If they're just a little bit shy, then sometimes some encouragement, going, you know, actually we haven't heard from the point of view of whatever group they're in. You know, what are your thoughts on this? Can provide that space for them to speak up. Any other thoughts on how to do that? I mean, lots of people in here facilitate workshops, so other suggestions on this?
You can kind of go around one by one, can't you? And do a round to give everyone a chance to speak.
I think splitting groups is often helpful as well. So if you've got a lot of data from post-it notes, you can send one group off to sort of process that and another group off to process a different set of data. And then as a facilitator, you can be a little bit manipulative about who are in those groups. So you can then
We would never.
you can then get the quiet people into positions where they're going to be comfortable to share those ideas and talk about the data.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Alan, you're very keen.
So it's in the floor. Retrospectives is another context. If I was seeing the dialogue sheets that I use, they, again and again, people tell me they get quiet people to speak. So there's a whole bunch of them for retrospectives and they're pre-printed. You put them in front of the team and they just follow the instructions. I've been experimenting with a couple of others for different contexts, one of which is nothing about the product. But you could design your own something, and they're very good getting quiet people to speak. And shutting up loud ones.
Okay, so before we get to these two thoughts, I'm going to steal a technique from Lean Coffee, which is thumb voting. I don't actually know what they call it. I'm just realizing I don't know what they call it. Sorry?
Roman vote.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, if you want to carry on talking about this particular topic, it's thumbs up. If you don't really care, thumbs to the side, well, one thumb to the side. And if you want to move on to the next topic, thumb down. So everyone gets to vote, not just the people at the table. Everyone in the room. Vast majority want us to move on. Right, okay. This is what I love about this stuff. It's choose your own adventure. Okay, so we've talked about participation. The next most voted for topic is choice of activities, which is back to. So, choosing an activity. There are loads of books written about this, which is amazing, but it also means it's like clearly very complicated and lots of people don't know how to do it. So the first thing I would say for this is identify your goals. If you don't know what you're trying to get out of a workshop, there's no way that you can pick the right activity. So choose your goals. I also have a cheat sheet for all of the things that I reference, so if anyone's interested in like the names of the books and like the Jeff Patton's cups, get in touch with me afterwards. I've got a cheat sheet and that I can send you that has all the links and references. So identify your goals. Know what you're trying to get out of it. Is it consensus? Is it a list of ideas? Is it narrowing in on one idea? Is it, brainstorming the vision of the company for the next 10 years? Is it, what idea do we build next? How do we improve the team? You can workshop just about anything, but make sure what you know what you're trying to accomplish. I don't think these are surprises to anyone who has ever been in a workshop. So Game Storming, brilliant book, sits on my desk. I thumb through it all the time trying to get ideas. Innovation Games by Luke Homan, also an amazing book, amazing information. Some of the innovation games have been moved online if you ever are in the position of having to facilitate remotely. I don't recommend it. It's really hard, but if you do have to, some of the innovation games are online now. And people who know me always think this is really funny because I am slightly obsessed with cupcakes, but Tasty Cupcakes has nothing to do with cupcakes. It's a crowdsourced list of games and workshop activities with instructions for what they're good for, how to use them, tips for the facilitators. They're crowdsourced, so double check the quality of what you're doing before you do it. But this is an amazing website that has lots of information. And I just think the name is really funny because I bake a lot of cupcakes in my life. These are the sources that I use every time I facilitate a workshop. I'll go through probably all three of these. I would love it if other people contribute ideas for how do they choose activities, where do they get their inspiration from. So I'm going to, again, throw this back out to the room. What questions do you have about choosing activities, specific instances that you need an activity idea, or where do you get inspiration for your activities? And silence.
Prioritizing very
So I've done that with variations on planning poker. You give various people a certain amount of currency. And that one's quite interesting because if there are people in the room who are the hippo, you can give them extra money to spend. Things like prune the tree can help you, can help prioritize. Prune the tree is in game storming. It's about, you've got all of these ideas, pick the ones that are most interesting. They've got a better explanation than I do, so I'd look it up from them. I know lots of people in the room have done this. Any other suggestions to answer his question?
Impact mapping can be good for that as well. Look at the assumptions between features and outcomes.
Excellent stuff. I always forget to recommend that one, even though I do it. Anyone else? I know lots of people have prioritized. Yes?
So if you're still looking for the vision, you can use design the box to align the group. And I think what you do with Pelican is buy a feature.
Yeah.
Innovation user.
And that's actually one of the games that they've put online. So if you need to do it remotely, you can buy a feature remotely. Sounds weird. Buy a feature remotely. Right. Yeah?
It's a question. So which activities do you tend to do again and again, like your bankers?
Me or people in the room?
Oh, well, people in the room. I'm asking you now.
Well, yes. But that's mostly because I'm standing in front of the room. So the ones that I come back to, it depends on what we're doing. So I facilitate a lot of retrospectives, and I really, I've done the 5 whys and keep, start, stop, less, more. I always manage to forget one of those when I do it. That's one of my go-to retrospective activities. In terms of workshops, there's a lot of, writing things on Post-it notes, affinity, diagramming them, and then discussing how that fits into roadmaps or plans for sprint planning. Those are kind of some of my.
Have you ever done body storming? Say again?
It's quite, in the game there's quite a few ideas which I've looked at again and again, and I just can't. It's just not going to work. It's too crazy.
I have done it.
The same ones.
I have done it before, and I always feel weird saying this out loud because people will suddenly know my secrets. As a crazy hippie California girl in the UK, I get away with so much. I can make people do crazy things because they're like, she's kind of crazy anyway. We're just going to do what she tells us to because we don't know what she's going to do next. I get away with a lot. I have done it. It can be really hard with the wrong group of people because you have to have a lot of trust in the process, trust in the facilitator, trust in each other that you're not going to be laughed at.
What is it?
Body storming is.
You kind of,
It's. So it's kind of brainstorming, but with physical objects and with your own body. So it's generally kind of a creative icebreaker to break people out of the. I've been sitting at my desk typing for 4 hours, but it's a very interactive. Can be terrifying because you have to get physically involved in making things. It's an interesting approach. It can be very scary.
So on that note, obviously you don't have this problem because you're Darcy, but being British, we often do. And I used to worry about taking anything apart from basic stuff and thinking, no one's going to like this. And actually, you'd be surprised. Even if you've got a team full of stereotypical British people, they actually do get into it. Maybe not for the first one. Once they realise that actually they are allowed to have a bit of fun and meet it, they get away with it. One thing I would say about it is draw toast. I don't know how to draw toast. The guy's name is Tom Chick, I think.
Great TED Talk. You should look it up. It's in my list of cheat sheets.
So that's a good one for the process.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Do you ever prepare backup activities in case an activity falls flat?
Yes, every time. Which kind of comes into the, which I don't think we'll get to talk about because it was down the list, but taking a break. If things are going wrong, you're not the only one as a facilitator who knows they're going wrong. Everyone else in the room will be just as aware that it's going wrong. And so saying, you know what? Think we need to take a break, 10 minutes, go have a cup of tea, come back. We're in the UK, no one's going to argue about being told to go make a cup of tea. And coming back and going, right, so that what we were doing before isn't working, we're going to do it this way, we're going to try something different. I've done it a lot. Like I said at the beginning, like most of my years were just full of mistakes. For me, that moment of vulnerability is scary, but valuable, because then people in the room understand that they're a part of the process and can help guide it just as much as the person standing in the front. Some activities, I'm like, okay, so plan B is really, really terrible. I hope plan A works out, but there's kind of always a backup plan. The one time I didn't have a backup plan, and this is like, the fail stories, if you've ever been to one of Adrian's workshops, he does a lot of the fail stories. I had one that I didn't have a backup plan. I was like, I'm just gonna bulldoze my way through this. And finally someone was like, Darce, can we just come back in a couple of weeks? Because this is really not working. And I had to be like, yeah, all right, you've got a good point. Let's break it up. And it's hard because you're standing there with people looking at you expecting magic. But magic comes from the people in the room, not the person facilitating. So yes, have a backup plan and be willing to admit that it has gone wrong.
Yeah, so during a workshop, what happens is sometimes the discussion gets very intense, and as a facilitator, you realize it, and maybe you call for a break or an activity or something. And I've seen this on some people's face that we are having a proper discussion and you want to take a break and just do some fun activity. People tend to think like that as well, because they think that this facilitator is actually not helping us to go deep down the problem, but maybe distracting us, because our intent is just to keep the mood light and make sure that everybody's being safe. But sometimes it's misinterpreted and it comes back later as feedback. Maybe you shouldn't have done that activity at the time, but you have your own points to justify it. But actually, some people are not feeling safe, and it's worth taking a break or coming back and doing an icebreaker or some fun activity. So how to deal with those situations?
So in my experience, if I know that the conversation needs to be stopped because emotions are running high or whatever, I will just say, you know what, it's time for a break, take a break, and then when I get feedback, you cut us off. It's like, well, yeah, I appreciate that I did, but as a facilitator, well, as anyone, not all feedback needs to be responded to. Like feedback, you can take it, you examine it, go, yes, I did cut you off, there was a reason for it, I stand by my actions, and then you go, right, that's that. As a facilitator, you have to do hard things. The other thing is the voting can help sometimes. Do we need to get into this much detail? Do people want to carry on now, or should we take a break and come back to it? So I find a lot of times it's not about being the dictator. It's opening it up to the conversation and letting people participate in where things go. So in my experience, it falls into two categories. I either know that I need to do it and I'm willing to accept that people will be unhappy with it, but that's life, it happens, or may democratize it and involve them in the conversation and say, I'm just gonna ask the question, do we want to carry on this conversation, or is it time for a break?
But voting cannot work every time, because you could have majority of loud people there and they say, yeah, we want to talk about it, but the quiet people who are, let's say, less in number, they're like, okay, whatever, yeah, it's fine, I don't talk about it. So
Well, and that's the role of the facilitator is to make that call. And the reality is it's not always fun. It's not always easy. It can, I've certainly gotten, in my time, negative feedback, and I have to accept that because I am, pushing people towards an outcome, we can't just let it wander willy-nilly. And if that were the point, you wouldn't need a facilitator. So it's hard. I totally admit it's really hard. All right, before we go on to the next question, oh, did you have a
Yes.
sorry, yeah, go, then we'll vote.
It's their fault if they abdicate all of the responsibility to you for them getting the outcome that they want, right? You can say, you're not going to continue this conversation now. If they take that as don't continue this conversation ever, that's on them and they're responsible for not being fulfilled or whatever.
Right, all right, time to vote. Carry on, don't care, move on. Ooh, this one's a little bit more mixed, but the move on has still won. So we're going to move on. Post-it note party tricks. This is seriously not a party trick. Don't ever do this at a party. You will never be invited back. You will never be invited back. Right. I have like facilitated things, and like the only thing I learned was how to open Post-it notes. It's great. We've all been in the situation, you've got Post-it notes, and you're like desperately scratching at them, trying to open the cellophane. Stick it in your hand, fold it in half. I hate doing this with the rectangular ones. If you fold it in half, the plastic will pop open, and it's magic. So if you haven't learned that before, like I do know people, I'm not actually that, I have like weak hands, but I know people who can do this one-handed, and like it's amazing. I wish I were them, I'm not. So yeah, square ones, rectangular ones, any of the ones that are like individually shrink wrapped, just like fold it corner to corner, and the plastic will pop off.
Doesn't work with CDs.
I'm not trying hard enough.
So you're the second person who said that in the last 3 weeks to me. They're like, don't do that with a CD. I'm like, I wasn't going to. Right, so that's the first trick. Second thing, everyone does this, right? You peel off a Post-it note, it gets all curly, you stick it on a wall, it falls off the wall, terrible. If you take Post-it notes, actually it's easier if I do it with the square ones. If you take Post-it notes, pull it straight down, stays flat. Yay! Then you stick it to the wall. Well, they don't stick to brick anyway, so stick it to the wall. The other thing you can do, when you get to the end of a Post-it note pack and there aren't enough Post-it notes to like pull it straight down, if you just peel it from the side, it also stays straight, which, you know, again, sticks to the wall. Except they don't stick to the brick, so I feel like I've just lied to you. And the bonus shape, if you buy them, I just learned this one this morning, I was really excited about this, so I added it in. If you buy the multi-packs, you get bonus shapes. Little squares. You get a diamond. If you don't have all of the mixed colors, like this one, you know, don't forget that you can turn Post-it notes on their side and get like differentiation. So if you need to group titles or, you know, I mean, I know that starts to look like a flow chart, but someone told me that. They're like, did you know about the bonus shape you get in a pack of Post-it notes? And I had to actually respond no when they showed me, and I was like, that's kind of cool. Okay. Those are my Post-it notes tricks. Anyone else? No. Okay.
Just one, on the remote workshops.
Sorry?
On the remote workshop, you don't have this problem. You always stick to the wall, they're very easily accessible by everybody.
That is very true.
Keep them forever.
That is very true. Yes. I have no tricks for remote Post-it notes, other than they don't fall off the wall. We're not going to vote on that one because I'm out of Post-it note tricks. So we're just going to move on to the next one now, which is, oh, yes? Perfect. We'll do one more and then we'll be done. Which direction do I need to go? See, this was like, you know, you like start flipping through the book and you choose your own adventure and you have no idea which direction you're going. So body language is the one that got the next number of votes. Body language, it's really interesting to me anyway, lots of people. Two things about two big topics of body language, yours and theirs. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm from California. I've lived in the UK for 8 years. I'm basically always cold, which means I stand like this a lot, which is not helpful as a facilitator. So I have really had to learn to like wear layers so that I don't look closed off simply because I'm cold. So be aware of your own body language, be open, be, you know, be appropriate for the room that you're in, but be careful because as a facilitator, you have a huge amount of control over the mood in the room. And so your body language can make or break a workshop. There is a former FBI agent in the States named Dave Navarro who wrote an amazing book around how to like read body language and how to influence your own body language to portray whatever it is you're trying to portray. Slightly frightening coming from an FBI agent, but it's a good book. And one of the things that he says is practice your own body language when it doesn't matter, so that when it does matter, it's natural to you. So if you know, like me, that I stand like this because I'm cold, practice all of the time. Practice when it doesn't matter so that in the moment that it does matter, it comes naturally to you. The same thing is true of looking at their body language. So learn to pick up the tips or the hints that people are not engaged in the conversation, that they're angry, that they're upset, that they're scared, that any of the other things that can ruin a workshop and ruin that safety that we need in the conversations. Watch their body language. And the thing about this, again, practice when it doesn't matter. Hang out in coffee shops and watch interactions between people. I have a couple of friends and we go to a place in London and we always play a game, first date coworkers, and you watch the body language between people and you kind of start to judge, like, what is the relationship between these people? How comfortable are they? Is there one person who's really engaged in the conversation and one person who's trying to pull back? And if you learn to pick those up in just social settings, it means that when you're in a workshop, you can actually tell what's going on. You can tell who in the room has an idea that they really want to get across and who in the room has an idea but they're scared to say it or they're intimidated by other people in the room. And if you know how to read the body language, you can then control the conversation in such a way that people feel safer and that the ideas get represented. So with the body language, just practice it. Like, I mean, we have so many opportunities to watch people in social situations and circumstances. Use it. Start looking at people to go, are they open and engaged in the conversation? If you're standing with someone and their feet are pointing towards you, it's an indication, not 100%, but it's an indication that they're engaged in the conversation. If they've turned their feet away from you, even if they're still facing you, that's actually an indication that they want to run away. And if you pay attention to those things, it's harder when you're in a meeting room and everyone's feet are under the table, but there are little tricks like that that you can start to learn and pick up to understand how are people reacting to the situations they're in. And that is helpful in workshops, but also just in life, because if you're having a conversation and they're trying to run away, you can decide whether or not you want to carry on or just go, you know what, let's just end the conversation now.
How do you do this with a setup like this with tables?
Well, the feet are harder, but there are other symbols that you can look at. So facial expressions. There's a lot of stuff about like how people, how their mouths are held, because if people are scared, they do tend to withdraw. How they hold their hands. I mean, you can see it on the underground. Lots of people, I was talking to a cat about this, people will like spread out and take up space and other people will shrink in. That's really apparent when you're sitting at a conference table. It's hard to do it in a room like this where I can't see most people, but I would also never recommend doing a workshop with quite this many people. One more in the back and then I think we're gonna have to call it.
Just in addition to that, so with body language, there is the element of culture as well. A lot of people from different areas exhibit slightly different tweaks, quirks of body languages. I forgot the author, but there's a book called Kiss, Bow, Shake Hands, I think so. It's great, it's excellent, but different countries, different regions, and the slight things, some cultures will shake a hand or some cultures will give it a kiss or something like that. And there are little tweaks of body languages from different countries. So if you have a really diverse team, it's worth knowing what is acceptable in other cultures and what's not. Because something might be perfectly normal in a facial expression by different cultures, but it might be rude in another. So look for that book.
Yep. What was the name of the book?
Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hands.
Right. I haven't heard of that one. I'm interested. So with that, we're near the end. So I'm going to thank everyone for giving me 45 minutes of their time, energy, and attention. I really do appreciate it. I always get a lot out of these. If you want to talk to me about anything else, now I'm around for the rest of the day. I also, I'm easy to contact. I do this stuff all the time. I love talking about this and learning from other people and helping other people figure out what they, how to deal with the situations they're in. So please do get in touch with me, email, Twitter. I'm pretty easy to find. So with that, thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.